I'm Zarina Zabriskie. I'm a writer. I have 5 books, and I've been published in 8 countries and have some awards and nominations. So what am I doing here teaching propaganda?
I'm Olga Tomchin. I'm an attorney, a human rights lawyer, and also a Soviet immigrant. So about a year ago, right after the election, I was really struggling to figure out what to do and how I could be effective and what I had that was unique to offer. And I saw all these calls to, collect your community, and I was like, okay, guess it's time to collect the Soviet immigrants. So I started an anti-Trump Soviet immigrant Facebook group, and that is now a year and a half, or a little over a year later. We have 4,500 members all over the country, and that is how Zarina and I came to know each other. And so we've been having meetups and doing activities and kind of trying to figure out what we have, uniquely to offer in this current political moment. Because it's a really weird time to be a Soviet refugee right now. So we were talking, Zarina and I, about her experiences, studying propaganda and how it works. We decided that it could be really cool to make a workshop about what Zarina had learned and her experiences and bring it to a wider audience. So we did a pilot first with our anti-Trump Soviet immigrant group, so with folks who had at least already some exposure to a lot of the concepts, and it was extremely positive. People were really excited and really wanted us to share the information with a wider and wider audience, and so that Americans who weren't of Soviet descent could learn about this. So here we are, and we're very excited. So Zarina is going to do her presentation, and then afterward we will do question and answers. Thank you so much.
There's also a page on Facebook that everyone can visit or like or join, because we will be sharing a series of videos.
Russian propaganda workshop.
Russian propaganda workshop.
Nice and easy.
On Facebook. So, or you can find me, I'm Zarina Zabriskie, and ask me any questions. The goals, methods, and strategies, plus basic defense and ways to counter Russian combat propaganda. Why study propaganda now? Well, we are under attack. Russia is carrying out a hybrid war against the West and against the United States of America, and our mass media and social media and our government are being used as the Trojan horse. Don't believe me? Take it from the source. This is the Russian Occupant video that went viral in 2015. And I don't know if you can see it from here. It was supposed to be blown really big. But these are screenshots, and they read, "I don't need your hypocritical freedom. I don't need your rotten democracy. I don't need your rotten democracy. The Western values is alien to me. I politely warn you for the last time, don't mess with me. And now, pay attention, if you haven't been already, but I know how to fight better than anybody else." In case you don't get the message, this is a hacker and the gloves. And the next screenshot, I know how to fight better than anybody else, and the hacker's hand, and the camera slowly moves to AK, the Kalashnikov. Be ready. What is the official message from the Kremlin? Nearly every evening, the Russian state-controlled television broadcasts the shots of the warplanes in Syria, as well as the NATO troops at the Russian border. There is a popular talk show on which analyst recently was talking about the great victory in Syria and bringing up the superpower status of Russia. And this is a flashback for us. When we were in the USSR, the superpower was the agenda. In November, Putin said, "All strategic and simply large-scale enterprise should be ready." That is, ready for war. Here's a little cartoon to lighten it up. It's in Russian, but I'll translate it for you. It says, "Now little Vovочка, little Vladimir, where is the Russian town of Voronezh?" And little Vovочka is shown right in Syria and says, "Here." So there's this concept of the major superpower and all the small countries that are kind of looking up to the superpower. Of course, there are more serious aspects to it. Russia, as the USSR before, depends heavily on defense industry. Putin has recently ordered a massive increase in military spending, and 2017 military expenses are set to exceed 65 billion, which is 3.3% of Russia's gross domestic product. And what is our response to all this? Is it a complete oblivion? We don't know about it. We don't know that they're at war with us. Or denial. It's very often that I teach this course or talk to someone or people answer to me online and they say, oh no, this is not happening. Russia is our friend, and they get very angry. And these are not just white supremacists in Charlottesville who chant that Russia is our friend. These are just regular people who have been already exposed to the Russian propaganda. Or most commonly, we just get confusion. Confusion because it's unclear. What's going on? Who are these people? What do they want? Why are they messing with us? And it is confusing because what on earth is a hybrid war? Well, a hybrid war is a type of war that blends military intervention and information and cyber warfare, as we have seen in the Russian Occupant video. There are the hackers and there is Kalashnikovs. So it's a combination. It's often called hybrid or informational psychological war, but for the purposes of staying clean, we're going to call it hybrid war. Well, here is an example. The United States election last year, and those of us who respond better to numbers will respond better to this example, but there will be other examples too. So about a year ago, we had the Electoral College, right? And in order to win the Electoral College, Trump had to win Florida and Pennsylvania with 29 and 20 electoral votes. We know that overwhelming majority of the Russian Americans, at least we know, were brainwashed by the Russian channels that were broadcasting on Russian Americans and internet, and that's about 2.9 million people. And they voted for Trump, most of them, the majority. And let's look at the numbers. What happened in Florida and Pennsylvania, which were the critical states for winning the presidency, right? Florida had 203,000 Russian American voters, and Trump won by 112,911 votes. And in Pennsylvania, they had 290,000 Russian American voters, and Trump won by 44,312. You see, these population, these groups could have won Trump the presidency, and people who were targeting these babushkas on welfare knew that too. It is all well planned. This is just one of the examples. This is why it is important to pay attention now. You, or some of you, here's another example. Who could have heard about the invasion of eastern Ukraine and Crimea by Russia? So on the one hand, there is a physical invasion, and there is solid evidence. There are photographs, there are videos, there are correspondence from all over the world, and they're reporting that they are what they call the little green men or polite men there. On the other hand, we have Putin and Russian officials who say that those aren't Russian forces in Crimea. Meanwhile, those of us who can read Russian can read that this is in Russian. We know they are Russian. So what's going on? 2014, Russia started the hybrid war in Ukraine. How did they start? There's a referendum, and here's a little dude with Ukrainian flag on his back, and he looks perplexed because he has to mark that Crimea is Russian or Crimea is not Ukrainian. And there is a nice little green polite man with a nice little Kalashnikov looking at him. So guess what he's going to mark? And here's an example of the Trojan horse where the weapons are being delivered to the eastern Ukraine disguised as a humanitarian convoy. So what is the role of cyberspace in a hybrid war? It is very important, and this is what we are going to talk about here. Internet is used as a weapon in the hybrid war for creating myths. And this is what propaganda has in common with literature. The myth, the story, the narrative. That's what becomes important. And so the Kremlin launches a myth. In this case, it's a narrative, Crimea is ours. So the propaganda machine manipulates the collective mind of the Russian population, of the Crimean residents who were prepared for this referendum for a while before it happened, and the worldwide community that is confused and doesn't know what's going on. And thus, the battlefield is really the human mind, collective and individual, like each one of us is targeted. And here we see how hybrid war stands versus the standard war. A hybrid war replaces a standard war at some instances, and psychosphere becomes the theater of conflict. I found this image on the web, it was by a Russian graphic artist, and you see like a little green man inside the head. So the mind is in our brain, and it is for our brain. How do we deal with it? But why war? Why wouldn't they leave us alone, right? What are Putin's goals, apart from these little images when Putin is fighting terrorists in Syria and United States and the Hydra, which is Canada and Europe and pretty much everyone? Well, first of all, as most of us know, it's an old principle because it's the best way to unite a country behind an imagined external enemy to distract from domestic problems. Russia's economy is suffering from the sanctions that were imposed on it by the United States and Europe after the annexation of Crimea. Also, creating such a myth is critical for Putin to stay in power. Why? Who is Mr. Putin? Well, there are three important things to know about him, and it's important for propaganda because that's where it originates. It all is connected together. First of all, it's the KGB. Everybody heard about the KGB, right? The security service, secret service. Putin is a former KGB officer. He rose to power in 1999. Most people heard about that. Then he is an oligarch. He is supposedly one of the richest people on earth, and nobody knows exactly how much money he has, but Forbes or CNN Money estimate him at about anywhere from $40 to $200 billion, while his official salary is $150,000. That's the data from 2015. And now here is something that you won't hear everywhere or read everywhere, and we'll see in a minute why. Because it's actually dangerous to say it, but I don't think here in Oakland. I mean, first of all, it's a pretty dangerous place as is, so we're all pretty brave to just be here. But it's a mafia connection. Leningrad, former Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, used to be a bandit capital of Russia, and I grew up there. There were a lot of bandits there. It was common to no one. So Putin had ties with mafia as well. His martial arts guru, a person that had a very critical role in his life, was one of the organized crime group's boss. And he helped Putin to enter an elite university, law department. It's the same university that I went to. It was really hard to get in. Putin wasn't ever a very bright student, but he got in on athletic merit. And Mr. Usvetov helped Putin to get into university. He was a pretty important person in St. Petersburg. In 1992, he organized athletes from his school in a militarized security squad that became Tambov Organized Crime Group, or Tambov Gang. In 1994, he was unfortunately shot. He, however, did pen a poem for his grave, and you can see it right there in Russian on his grave, and it says, "A grave, on the grave an epitaph. I am dead, but immortal is mafia." Anyone who can read Russian can see it. It's right there. He also had 2 convictions for group rape and currency fraud, and spent 20 years in prison. Yeah, so what? It was his teacher, right? Well, here's more information, and that, again, is a very dangerous piece of information to have. According to the court materials from the trial in London from 2015, in late 1990s, Putin supported the Tambov organized crime group, Tambov gang. And this is Mr. Litvinenko, who decided to investigate the connections between Putin and St. Petersburg administration and Colombian cocaine trafficking and money laundering in Spain. Well, surprisingly or not, he was poisoned with polonium-210 in London by FSB services. And why would KGB bother with stopping investigation into mafia and oligarchs? The mafia state, the KGB, organized crime and oligarchs. It's a conglomerate of billionaires, criminals, and security services that consolidates all power in the country, controls all aspects of political and social life. And why should we care? Because this is where this country is moving very quickly. What are the ambitions for him? What does he want? Why doesn't he leave us alone? He wants to stay in power and increase his personal wealth. And there are myth-making machines that are helping him to stay in power and increase his personal wealth. So can you say that there's a cult of personality? I don't know, you decide. There's this image of Putin with a nimbus around his head as a saint, and this are the Kazakhs who presented someone, I forgot whom, with a statue of Putin, a bust of Putin as an Emperor Neron, and it's not a joke. It is not a satire. They're serious about it. How can it happen with people this day and age, right? You say, are these people crazy? What are these Russians? How could they buy into this? Well, it's not the first time, and it's probably not the last. Here I got some quotes by propagandists of the past and of the present. So here's Goebbels, who is the #1 Hitler's propagandist, and he said, let me control the media, and I will turn any nation into a herd of pigs. And also importantly, he said propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident that they are acting on their own free will. That is important. When you start thinking that this is all happening from inside, that nobody's telling you to do that. And let us visit here with Mr. Dmitry Kiselyov, who also happened to go to the same school as me and Mr. Putin, Leningrad State University, same military department. People will swallow anything. People will swallow on a regular basis. The bar will be lowered. More vulgarity, more obscenity. At some fine moment, we will find ourselves splashing in dirt like pigs. We will be devouring each other along with the dirt, and that will be the lowest of the low, he said in 1990. And then he proceeded on this career, and he actually is fulfilling these goals. This is what happened on the Russian television and in the country. Let's get it closer to the house here, because we are in the United States. Basically, we don't care as much about Russia. We care about what's happening here. What are Putin's ambitions for this country? Well, as early as 2014, I have discovered this article on RT, which is Russia Today, formerly, which was titled, and again, it's not a joke, US would benefit from such a president as Putin, Russia's arms chief. It's not a joke. And then the deputy prime minister said that Vladimir Putin's ability to understand the business of the military-industrial complex and give detailed instruction of its work could help to improve life in the United States. Okay, well, fast forward a couple of years, 2016, it all becomes way more crystal clear. Short-term goals to get rid of the economic sanctions that were imposed by the US and European Union after the annexation of Crimea, have the US leave NATO. If you've been following, you know that this is where it's going. Ultimate goals to weaken the United States through the internal conflicts, schisms, and dissolution Brexit style, which we also know are closer to the goal than ever before. The ultimate goal, usually the usual goal for dictators, the world domination. This is not different. It's not very original here. Here's a very nice visual. It says here in Russian, today Crimea, tomorrow Rome. And this is on some rural warehouse in a town of Resign. Fast forward 1 year, right now, in November, a couple of weeks ago, there was a lovely video called Uncle Vova, We Are With You. So whoever was paying attention knows already that Vova, Vovochka is a diminutive for Vladimir. Uncle Vova is the Uncle Vladimir. And they're little children, and also little children in military uniform, military cadets, singing a song, We Will Bring Alaska Back to the Heart of the Motherland. They are led by the member of parliament, and there are warplanes cruising back and forth. And it is extremely threatening. I just encourage you to go on YouTube and find it. And if you don't know how to find it, ask me. I'll be happy to share it with you. I wrote a little article on a Medium about it. And it is impressive. If you still don't believe me that we are under attack and they consider themselves being at war with us, watch this video. At the same time, and this is very typical for Russia, there is a myth, another myth going on. Russia is the hope of the world. And here's another impressive image with Putin, the Patriarch Kirill, who also used to be a KGB officer, Mr. Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, who's a big friend and admirer of Trump, and also military planes and ships. And it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. How does it all come together? It's schizophrenic, but so it is. And there are additional goals with this campaign, which are creating internal enemy for internal security. And here I put together a collection of images of strictly anti-American props that are used in everyday life all over Russia, helping to bring the anti-American and anti-Western hysteria in Russia to the crisis condition. This is a little bench at the bus stop, and you see a bear and a bald eagle, and the bear says to the bald eagle, shut your trap, chick. And if you didn't get it, it says we're against the politics of the United States. I love this image. This is a sewage truck in the city of Perm, and it has Obama at the back. This is kicking is Putin, who is a martial arts. He learned his martial arts skills from the mafia boss, remember? So he's kicking Obama. He says, this is our answer for the sanctions. More Obama. He wasn't very popular, unfortunately, back in Russia. So here's Obama hanging off the bridge in the city of Perm, 2015. And it says, the dead Obama is worth 7,000 alive Ukrainians. To be honest with you, I don't even know what it means. And frankly, I don't want to know. But you understand that this is not good. This is not a compliment to the United States or to Obama, or to Ukrainians at this point. Another little competition in the city of Bratsk. It's a youth festival where young children and teenagers are kicking Obama's image, and the higher you kick, the more you score. And so what is also interesting that the mayor of this town got a special award for putting such a great event together. How does it all work? What is the psychology behind it? And how do they manipulate the minds that people respond so well? Let's take a look at goals, methods, and tactics of combat propaganda. I went to Leningrad State University, now known as St. Petersburg State University. In order to get my degree, I had to take the 4th course of combat propaganda. They were teaching us there to always think of what is going on, how is it done, who is doing it, why are they doing it. That was kind of helpful, so let's apply this to this information. What is going on? Combat propaganda is the art of sowing discord in the ranks of the enemy by means of disinformation and manipulation of consciousness. And we'll go through that again. How are they doing it? Combat propaganda actively supports the myths, again, embedded in the people's minds, collective and individual, and it aggressively opposes those who hold other views or try to challenge this myth by using logical arguments. There were manuals, but they were not available. In the class that we had, We didn't even have a textbook because everything was so secret. Find 2 unclassified manuals. We just know it exists. It is not available. You cannot buy it. You cannot find the content on the web, but it exists, and the description exists, and it's the information on the main areas of secret operations of hybrid warfare, also called informational psychological warfare, and it focuses on disinformation, lobbying, manipulation, blackmail, and crisis management. And they also focus on the role of mass media in the secret operations of hybrid warfare. I found another unclassified manual, and I'm translating the pieces of it, and I'm using the parts that I've translated throughout the rest of this presentation. So some of the things that you will see are coming to you from the secret of the secret of the secret. Don't tell anyone, go tell everyone, actually. That's the goal here. There will be 4 words that I want you to remember from me. If you go home and forget all of it, that's totally fine with me. Actually, you will be happy not knowing about it. But there are 4 words that you want to remember. And if you can't remember 4, then remember just 1. And number 1 word will be demoralization. That's the goal of combat propaganda, is demoralization of the population and army of the enemy. Demoralization, everybody knows what demoralization is, right? It comes, the root is morale, and that's breaking the morale and taking it down. How is it done? It's done by using physiology, not psychology, by putting people under stress. And this is number 2 word that I want you to remember, stress. How is it done? By planting discord. It's a very old principle, divide and conquer, and the word I want you to remember here is discord, and we'll be going over it again. And the number 4 word that we already heard is confusion. Confusion is the number 1 strategy of combat propaganda, and as we said in the very beginning, it is all very confusing. It's new, it's strange, and they want you to be confused. So here are the 4 words again: demoralization, stress, discord, or divide and conquer, and confusion. Let's look at demoralization again. Why do they need it? They need it because it will weaken the population and army of the enemy and lead eventually to the moral capitulation. Demoralization was used before during the physical warfare and invasion. We were practicing in the class and writing pamphlets. That was one of the number 1 thing I remember, sitting in the class and writing the pamphlet, American soldier, you are surrounded, surrender. And again, demoralization of the enemy, it manifests itself in breaking the spirit, instilling apathy and fatigue, and very importantly, makes us give our values. It makes us doubt things, and it makes us eventually start thinking, oh, maybe Russia is not that bad. Maybe Russia is our friend. What's so bad about having Putin? It doesn't make any difference. Once you start having these thoughts, something from there is seeping in, and it's been working, and your values are starting to slowly crumble. And that means that they are being successful. Let's see how they do it. They use the knowledge of physiology. Stress is a number 1 condition under which the mind goes in a very vulnerable state and is open to impression. In other words, the propaganda machine can alter your emotional patterns by using the brainwashing technique. If I speak like this for 5 hours, and you won't be allowed to go drink any water, use the restroom, or move, in 5 hours I can sell you anything. A Russian tank, Octopus literary salon, anything. Maybe not in 5 hours, people are different, but that's the basics behind it. That's how it's done. By stimulation and overstimulation of all senses, and that's not unique to the Russian propaganda. Take a look how it's happening. Propagandists create the atmosphere of danger and crisis through the continual flow of mass media fabrications. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the last year there was one event after another. There's a tax bill. The next day, the net neutrality is gone. The next day, there's a pipeline that is breaking. Every day brings some breaking news. And at some point, you just stop caring because you're overwhelmed. No person can constantly pay 100% attention to 100% breaking news. So what they do, they instill fear, paranoia, and confusion by oftentimes falsifying or distorting the historical reality of the past or of the present and creating stress. So if you're watching Fox channel 24/7, very soon you'll find yourself in the state of stress. And then it will be very easy to sell you, again, practically any idea. Just to sum it up, propagandists target people at the time that is perceived as vulnerable, and they offer the solutions and act at the subliminal level, getting these messages ingrained into your mind. And remember what Gogol said? That the most effective propaganda is the one that are coming from people, when people think that they came to these conclusions. And that's how it's done, because you don't know what's going on. You're under stress. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of this moment. If you don't take home anything else from that, take home this, because this is happening to us on an everyday basis with all the events that we're experiencing as a country, as a nation. Emotional stress is created by using excitement of all senses, shock, overwhelming situations. For example, watching catastrophes. Or it can be achieved by creating sensory deprivation. It's also used in religious brainwashing, but we're not going to go into that right now. Information that is then offered relieves the emotional stress. For example, the help is provided, or the economy is booming, right? You've seen these messages here and there on Twitter that the unemployment is down, the economy is doing well, salvation, and so forth. And trust to the source of information at this critical moment is being formed. That's the physiology, because there are parts of your brain that are being shut at this point and that are not functioning as normal. So you are particularly vulnerable at getting in any ideas and processing them as your own. And at this point, the new information is accepted readily based on this trust. Propagandists can manipulate our senses through just using mass media, television, or internet. There are 5 senses, right? Vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. We all know that. And use of color. So red and dark purple colors and hues of oranges, just as the color of my presentation, the background, make your heart beat faster. It brings your blood pressure up, and you don't know about it. And this is the reason I used this background, to use it as a visual prop and show you what's going on. If I chose a green background, I would be putting you all to sleep, intentionally. I still might put you to sleep, because it's a lot of information. But at least my intent in using this color is bring your heart rate up and make you agitated, right? Agit propaganda. So these colors are used a lot, as we know, Fox is using it. This is the Daily Stormer background, which is the neo-Nazi website. And it's being used and abused, and it's known by propagandists. The use of sound, very well known, and it's not a new knowledge by any means. It's been used in religious practices and rituals ever since cavemen. In shamanic cultures, they use fire and drums during the religious rituals. And not so far, we don't have to go all the way to the cave. Here we have the young pioneers drumming away. I remember the young pioneers drumming away. It does create this heightened state of agitation when you hear a lot of drums. I'm sure people were at some point exposed in their life to the loud rhythmic music, and you know how it makes you feel. The same was used by the Nazis in Germany, a lot of drumming during their torches marches. And here we have, quite recently, Charlottesville, our own torches and chanting. I don't know if they were drumming. I found the depiction of just one drum, but they definitely were chanting. And chanting works the same way. It's a rhythmic, loud sound, so drums or chanting will work. And this wonderful show is at the Red Square in Moscow. It's an annual festival of military orchestra. So every year they bring a lot of military orchestras that drum away, and they use the color and the sound, and these people really know what they do, and this is on a big scale, not like our little Nazis there. The use of smell and taste. Again, remember in the beginning of the presentation, for those of you who were here, I mentioned how the small amount of Russian American voters won Florida and Pennsylvania. So in the Russian store, in our own Russian store on Geary Avenue in San Francisco, when you go in and you see all the food that you like and remember from your childhood, if you were unfortunate enough to experience it, there is a huge, gigantic screen with a RT, Russia Today, images blasting at you as you buy your kolbasa. And you're not paying attention because you want your salads. But again, we're talking about subliminal messages. All of this is going past your head and straight into this secret, hidden compartment that you don't even know that is there. This particular example, of course, is again, for Russian voters, who again, made a huge difference in the last year's situation. And of course, it's cultural. You would be using Russian kielbasa and borscht for the Russians. You would be using hamburgers or hot dogs for Americans. And it is being used, and I have a couple of examples. The way the whole Cyberwar campaign started in 2015, and it has been covered in a couple of mainstream sources. The Troll Factory made an experiment. They threw an event on Facebook that anybody who comes to Times Square at 4 o'clock on a certain day will receive, or midday I think, will receive a free hot dog. There was no other reason or any run to it. There were secret cameras, hidden cameras installed that could monitor the space where the people who want free hot dogs would arrive. And at that time, sure enough, there were a bunch of people who arrived there looking for their hot dogs. Well, they didn't get any. But the people back in St. Petersburg, in the middle of the night, were celebrating with champagne, because that showed to them that they actually can manipulate people's conscious and people's physical presence in a remote control way. Here's another food example. Quite recently, there was an incident with Putin's burger for his birthday. Putin turned 65 years old, and suddenly there were reports everywhere in the Russian media that all over the world his birthday is being celebrated. You perhaps have not heard about it, right? Well, according to the Russian media, everybody here were celebrating Putin's birthday. Particularly in Manhattan, in a restaurant, there was a Putin burger, which is this multi-layered affair, looking really unhealthy. And the goal of this was to normalize Putin's crimes and glorify his dictatorship, basically, through food. How was it done? First, the photographs were taken. There were some waiters. They hired Russian waiters. The restaurant management didn't know anything about it. It was the initiative of the people who worked there, a couple of Russian women. And they made a little video showing people enjoying the Putin burger and praising it. It went everywhere. It went blasting on the Russian television, main channels, and so forth. And it was repeated again and again and again until it became the myth, until it became the common narrative, the recognized threat for people in Russia, for the consumers of the mass media there. And it was reinforced by a number of video messages, visual messages from all over the world. Here you see a message. This is Barcelona, Golden Putin in St. Petersburg. This is Berlin. This is in Syria. Happy birthday, Defender Putin. So these images were blasting at the Russian people from everywhere. And they, most of them probably didn't have time to stop and hesitate or think about it. They probably thought that there were these images in Barcelona and Berlin. Well, what do we do when something like this happens? We don't want to be in place of these poor Russian people. We want to stop if something looks like a red flag. Myth-making versus facts. You need to check what's going on, and people did that. A bunch of people in Russian social media, and then Americans started to check, and of course the management came back with a message: there was no such thing, there was no Putin burger, the waitress was there just as a temp, and she was immediately fired, and none of this really happened. It's just a myth created to reinforce the image of the dictator here and there by using food. So it's applying to your senses. I know that a lot of this information is sort of dry, but hopefully burgers or hot dogs make it a little bit more palatable. So this is the typical example of tactic called disinformation. And this is important to remember because we are subjected to a lot of disinformation. When a false claim or story is produced, like with Putin burger or a hot dog, right? It is circulated in social media, and bots and trolls push hashtags and topics on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media you happen to be. And if you're not on social media, you're actually not completely safe because the mainstream media pick up the story from the social media. They see, oh, everybody's talking about it, it's trending, so let's cover that. So then it goes into this echo chamber, and one station, ABC, starts picking it up from NBC, and thus it's starting to go on around and generate the speed. And then the public discussion ensues. You know, well, it didn't happen in this particular case, but in some other cases, everybody will be joining if it will be closer to our hearts. You know, there's a lot of controversial things happening lately. We're not going to go into that, but sex scandals. Everybody has an opinion. Women have their own opinion, men have their own opinion. Older people, younger people, straight people. I mean, like, everybody has something to say about it, and there are often clashes. But what people are saying are not important to the propagandist. What's important that it already is being the talk of the town, and that's existing. There where we see this like really scary Frankenstein thing happening, where out of nowhere, out of the space, out of the sheer air, comes a story, and it becomes the reality. And then they start mixing, and we don't know anymore what is the reality and what is the myth, and where are we? And this is exactly their goal, because as you remember, one of the important words is confusion. They want to confuse us, demoralize us. When you're confused, you can't stay together, you get very tired. So from here, with the public discussion is a very important point in this chain, and after a certain number of the repetition, the negative emotion responses form. And a very good example here, not as much as a culinary example, but her emails, right? Everybody remembers her emails. And not everybody might know what her emails. I actually didn't know for a while what exactly was in the emails, and there were not much in the emails, so we can argue about what was in Hillary's emails, but everybody heard her emails, right? It became